Welcome again, everybody, to the CMTK Talk Hour after a 4-month gap. This is the 15th of January 2025, and I, your host, CM Kosemen, am joined by our co-host, TK Sivgin, and we are continuing the incredible series where we consider non-human intelligences before the evolution of humanity. And this has been a long-running series. Basically, what we did was we split the history of the world into geological epochs. And going back, we looked at each epoch and tried to imagine the human-like intelligent civilizations which may have evolved from the creatures that lived then. And actually, the original hypothesis that led to our discussion was called the Silurian hypothesis, and I think today we will be discussing potential intelligent lineages in the Silurian period, right?
Exactly, because in the last episode we did the Devonian and we're just moving further back in time.
Oh, nice.
So it has finally come to this. The Silurian hypothesis is unfortunately not named after the Silurian period, though. It's named after a race from not an alien race, but like an intelligent race from Doctor Who that in the series was always called Silurians, and nobody really knows why, because it never made sense even in the context of the show.
Sometimes film producers come up with decisions like that and they kind of stick. And once again, my mind wanders back to one of our favorite haunting grounds, Star Wars, the Star Wars universe. And there you got a lot of creatures with very weird names. And usually these names were like generated in the last minute by people who worked on the set. And I'm thinking about the creatures in Jabba's palace. And one of them is called Ephant Mon, which was, I mean, you think there's like a very deep lore behind that, but turns out it's just an amalgam of Elephant Man. And I think
that's not the DJ, right?
No.
That one has a different name.
Ephant Mon is the thing that looks like a Gompotir head mounted on a stocky humanoid body. And he's a very, very indistinct background character. The DJ was added, I think, in the special editions.
No, he was already like a puppet in the original version of the movie.
Oh,
I think he had a name. He had like a very cute name. I can't remember. But
you talking about? Sorry.
We talked about this in a previous episode of the podcast. For anyone who doesn't know, where we just took apart all of the Star Wars creatures from a spec evil perspective.
Were you talking about Max Rebo?
Yeah, Max Rebo. Yeah, that was his name.
The blue elephant.
Yeah, I gotta go to the gig, man. Have you seen that? A Robot Chicken sketch?
No, unfortunately I haven't.
Max Rebo trying to get to the gig, even though everything gets like blown up around him. Oh man.
No, I haven't watched that. Well, a lot of Jabba's palace creatures were named with that Silurian hypothesis mentality. There's another creature called Rees, and it's a three-eyed alien, and turns out it's just I'm calling it amalgam. Sorry, my brain is fried today. No, it's just a palindrome of 3 eyes. So a lot of cases like that.
Damn.
As the saying goes, many such cases. So going back to the Silurian, what do you have for us in this?
So let's start with some basic facts. The Silurian was a period, and I'm emphasizing that because I remember in the last episode, someone in the comments got mad that we used the wrong terminology to describe all of these spans of time. So like the Paleozoic is an era and the Silurian is a period, and everything below that is stages and such, or epoch.
Yeah, I mean, I pretty much use them interchangeably, so
yeah, everyone does, but like some people are pedantic. So the Silurian period started around 420 million years ago, and from our perspective, it ended 420 million years ago and it began 443 million years ago. So it lasted about 24.6 million years.
I mean, this is now getting into real deep time, 400 million years. And I think, we were, I think, maybe right to talk about Star Wars creatures and go on many tangents, because it seems that in this age there are not many suitable candidates for the evolution of, let's say, single-minded intelligent species like humans, right?
Yeah, I would say so too. So this period basically was like in a recovery phase from a previous mass extinction at the end of the Ordovician. And yeah, life during this time is what we would today call primitive, which I don't like using that word because, it has like some negative values attached to it. But yeah, the life here was pretty simple. Like the vertebrates around during this time were the first ones that you would call fish.
Yep.
So you had the first sharks, you had the first placoderms, but you also still had a lot of these jawless armored fish, which are basically all extinct today, like the heterostraci, anaspids, galeaspids. I don't remember all of the names, but I just love how they look.
Yeah.
I have with me here Vertebrate Paleontology by Michael Benton. And I just love looking at the reconstructions of these early fish.
All those things with permanently open mouths and weird, funny faces.
Yeah, or even like horns and stuff, and very large bone plates.
Yeah. I mean, I'm thinking about things like Poraspis, which basically just look like a armored, almost prawn-like kind of fish, and they just wiggled about and didn't do much, I guess. And
yeah, they didn't even have fins, really. They only had their tail, so they could have moved like a tadpole, basically.
Well, they would have been easy to model in a simple 3D game. That's all I'll say. But I think you have lots of giant eurypterids in this era, right?
Yes, but the problem is we already had intelligent eurypterids in the Devonian episode, so we have to do something different now. But right, you had large eurypterids. They kind of recovered from the Ordovician extinction before fish completely took over. And of course, you still had Orthocerata and all these other early cephalopods.
It must be, I mean, even though fish were kind of quote-unquote primitive looking, they must have had some sort of an edge, because I think I would predict their diversification kept the eurypterids from rebounding in a way.
I mean, eurypterids were still doing well in the Devonian and Carboniferous, and they were just kind of reduced gradually by subsequent climate changes, I think.
Okay.
You are right that fish during this time started to have one advantage, which is jaws.
Yes.
Like I said, the first sharks were around during this time, and also the first placoderm, which, if you don't know, are these armored fish that already had jaws, and some of them could grow very large later on in the Devonian, like Dunkleosteus and Cocosteus.
Yeah.
If you remember that story you told me where they misspelled it.
Oh yeah. That was a good one. Well, what was on land? When I was a kid, I used to imagine like these early periods as the land being deadly, almost like you couldn't breathe the atmosphere, but under the waves, it was a whole other story. But was there anything on land at this point, or?
Yeah, you actually did have the first land plants, probably already in the Ordovician at the end. But in this period, you had the first plants really manifest destinying the land, but they still it was weird. It was still like this early colonization phase where they didn't even produce soil yet. Like the first paleo soils are only known from the Devonian.
Wow.
But yeah, you must have had early plants like Cooksunia or Baragwanatia, which looked a lot like club mosses, if you know what those plants are.
Yeah, those all need some sort of moisture to reproduce, right? They can't really colonize dry areas well.
Yeah, like they are very archaic in that way. They need to be close to water, and they probably did not venture out beyond streams and rivers and coasts.
Well, I'm looking at a kind of geological map of the world in the Silurian period, and it really looks like a tropical island paradise kind of world.
You you had the continents that would become Northern Europe and North America being pretty much on the equator, but the rest of the world was centered around the South Pole.
Yep. And I guess there wasn't much going on there. And as you just told, North America and Europe are like some sort of like Hawaii type constellations and some Hawaii type island chains there. So looks like a good place to visit. Must have been some nice beaches there. Mm-hmm. But were there any arthropods on land? Because I think I'm going to work an angle just for that now.
I mean, yeah, you had the first land arthropods during this time, the first millipedes, the first scorpions. Mm-hmm. Insects, I don't know if insects were around yet during this time, but probably like some early land crustaceans.
So back in this era, hypothetically, although maybe we just don't have the fossils, but hypothetically, these extra small arthropod groups such as mites or gnats or ants had not evolved. They would appear later. So anything coming onto land would have this really rare founder effect where it could be really stupid and dumb and really weird and even maladapted. It could be really zany and exotic. But as long as it basically kept itself from drying, it could eke out a living on land. And I think that gives us a kind of potential for some really hypothetically interesting arthropods. I mean, I'm talking about things like, imagine soft-bodied, almost caterpillar-like things, but they're the size of shoes or cats. But later on in geological history, there will be tiny insects which would eat them or parasitize them and make life impossible for them. But I think just in this, as you told, manifest destiny stage, there could be rooms for some really freaky land arthropods which would leave no fossils, but we could still maybe hazard a guess to their appearance and what they may have done. So hear me out on this, okay?
Okay.
Imagine a race of arthropods that are soft-bodied on land because they don't need the armor to protect from parasites because parasites did not evolve yet.
But don't they also need the carapace to just stand, for structural support?
I'm thinking about something like caterpillars, like very squat and like shoe-sized and perhaps even shoe-shaped caterpillar-like things that are somehow distantly related to myriapods or maybe very early arthropods.
But now, they are not completely squishy. That's what I'm asking, because they need some structural support to be able to stand.
Yeah, they have some support, but maybe they have these, I don't know, fleshy lobopod-like legs. They're almost like flattened peripatus-like things.
I mean that would be interesting if they were not true arthropods but lobopods, like velvet worms.
Yeah, exactly. Like either velvet worms themselves or something that peeled off early from the ancestral arthropod stock and became like a sort of quasi-velvet worm type thing. And living on land, these things could really diversify and maybe, hear me out on this. Their biggest concern would be staying wet and moist. So maybe they could form these chains and their skin would be covered with these microscopic grooves. And one end of the chain would be in a river or lake and it would convey wetness with capillary action. And so it's almost, imagine like a human centipede kind of thing, but it's like a centipede. Well, actually it's like a onychophoran or like a false lobopod centipede, but you get the idea.
It's a cubed centipede.
Yeah. So all these individuals are in contact with each other. It's like one mass of like squishy bodied large arthropods on land, and they're foraging, and the need to stay together would result in the evolution of some social behaviors among them. And they could maybe even evolve into something like an ant colony. But instead of an actual nest dug underground, you got this one chain of animals that kind of roams across the land in one body. And it's still not a human-grade sophont, but I think things like this could be really intelligent. They could merge, split off. They could have different units specialized for like fast runners going on the front or like large-bodied things that shelter predator juveniles in the center. I don't know. A lot of things could happen.
It reminds me a lot of the ant shogoffs from Serena, if you remember those.
My memory fails me. I know Serena, but can you refresh my mind again?
I mean, in like the very late stages of Serena, there is this species of ant that does basically what you say, where they all basically stick together and form one giant organism that moves as one mass.
Yeah.
And like the ants, I think they are marine ants, and so they just form like flippers and paddles when they need, and it's very interesting and also very disturbing.
Yeah. So I don't know, and because on land there are no predators, at least not immediately, these things could evolve maybe really distinct colors to identify themselves. Imagine they have this like fluorescent yellow or fluorescent pinkish color, and the color helps individuals which kind of detach from the main colony find the colony again because it's really bright, so they know where to go. So so I don't know, like it's very rare when an entire biosphere opens up for the first time, and you can have room for some pretty incredible things there.
It is interesting that the colonization of land didn't actually kick off an event similar to the Cambrian explosion.
Or maybe it did, and we have no fossils.
Yeah, but I think you would find fossils because most of those early land animals would have lived in an environment that would have been conducive to fossilization anyway.
True.
Yeah.
Like a sort of muddy
delta kind of situation. It just didn't open up that much because like these early land environments were not as ecologically permissive as like the early Cambrian, where everything was still in water. Because early life on land must not have been easy. It must have been hard. And I think the first animals to live there only did so because of pressure from life in the ocean.
True.
Yeah, because there is this really great book about this actually by Mark McManaman. Wait, I'm gonna put it out.
All right.
If I can find it again, of course.
Take your time. It's really great to be
our listeners, you know.
Yeah.
So the book. God damn it! Damn it! There it is. Come on.
Well, it feels great to be podcasting with you again. That's what I can say. While we wait for TK to search for the book, I hope
you can tell the fine people out there a joke.
Oh, well, my mind is actually fried because before doing this podcast,
I found
a huge video. But yeah, here we are. It's called Hypersea.
Yes. And basically in the book, McManaman states that, like at first, there must have been actually no incentive for any animal to live on land because there would have simply been nothing to live off of.
Not even the earliest plants.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like the earliest plants first needed to create habitat before anything could actually live on land permanently. And that was actually like a very complex process because first you needed bacteria that created soil, that cycled minerals in the soil. Then you needed fungi. Then you actually only then could you have plants in the first place. And only when you had this already somewhat complex system of bacteria, plants, and fungi could you also introduce animals. So it was like an evolution. Like it was like setting up an ecosystem from the ground up, basically. And
but I'm gonna give a little pushback there. Could there not have been far simpler ecosystems like slime mats or just even things like lichens or just green slime? And
like bacteria and such did exist on land probably since the Precambrian.
Yeah.
But it did take some time for multicelled life to get on land.
Yeah, but as long as that slime was there, once a multicellular animal managed to stand and walk around on land, there's something for it to eat. And
there are trace fossils all the way back in the Cambrian of arthropods and mollusks crawling around on land, but they probably were not actual land animals. They just temporarily visited.
Oh, by the way, speaking of trace fossils, fossils. I was just walking in the street the other day, and I looked on a car which was kind of old and dirty, and it was covered with dust. And I looked closely, and on the car I saw marks of a slug or a snail, and it left its radula marks, just cleaning the dry slime from the car's surface. So what about the evolution? What do we know about the evolution of gastropods is what I'm getting at in this age.
As far as I know, the oldest fossils of land snails only date back to the Carboniferous, which is actually interesting, because you would think these would have been among the earliest land animals because of how quote unquote simple they are.
Yeah.
But yeah, they actually arrived on land pretty late.
But could there not have been, or were there not things that look like slugs, or even flatworms? I mean, platyhelminths, they were around, I think, back then.
Probably, but they probably would have also not left behind any good fossils.
Yeah.
Because they are soft-bodied.
So that's what I'm getting at. Even though, yes, there was not topsoil and none of the complex ecosystems that would emerge later, there would be something on land. There would be green slime, and once there's slime, there could be all of these hypothetical soft millipede creatures, or even flatworms which come up there, or even things like, what was the name of that thing they discover only in aquarium shops and no one can understand? It's like this...
Placozoa.
Yeah, placozoans that slither about on land.
Yeah, probably. But again, like, there would have been no evidence of that.
I know.
I mean, there could have been, but the point that this book by McManaman is trying to make, that is that you could only have an actual ecosystem, or at least like a complex ecosystem, once things like parasitism on land evolved. Like, the book is called Hyper-C, because basically he imagines the fluids inside plants and animals interlocking with each other through acts like parasitism and eating and such, and symbiosis, and thereby creating like a substitute of the ocean on land through which organisms can propagate themselves.
Oh, well, I don't contest that, but still, even with that, I think all I'm saying is, if you had a time machine and you took a walk on land there, you, of course, would not see any large animals, but like, if you had a macro lens, you could see a lot of weird things that nobody would ever see again on land, because the complex ecosystem we just talked about and that McManaman described, that would wipe those out, because they would be like too naive to survive. But back at least in the earliest days, there was this like one window where, I don't know, imagine, I'm thinking about like flatworms the size of dinner plates or stuff like that, just flowing over land, things which you would never see again once more complicated organisms were able to diversify.
Honestly, that would make for a great like one-off spec evo, not even a project, maybe just like one illustration, like the first ecosystem on land, and you have just this desert-like landscape with like a single brook or spring flowing through it, and on the banks you have these slime mats and worms. And
did you watch this? It was viral, I think, like 10 years ago or 12 years ago.
Okay.
But there was this one video of this guys lowering this camera into a sewer, and they're trying to clean some pipes or something. But they see a kind of ball of worms that have somehow survived there, and it's like it's nothing extraordinary. It's just a lot of very small worms. Maybe they're bloodworms or something, but they're all bunched together in a golf ball sized mass, okay? And when the camera comes close, something very interesting happens. The entire ball of worms contracts like a single organism, because all the worms are scared at the same time. So it goes and it's a very emergent property that makes these things look like a far more sophisticated creature. It looks like a brain, to be honest, a disembodied brain just throbbing down there. Did you remember this thing?
No, I don't think I've ever seen that video. It sounds kind of scary.
It's actually like, there used to be a lot of those weird like sewer creature videos, and a lot of them were fake, and a lot of them were also misidentifications. Some of them were just videos of fat accumulating from, well, like kitchen waste. And, when you look at them, they look really organic. Well, they are organic, but they look like they're alive. It looks like a reef of sponges almost, but it's just like a really gross accumulation of fat. But yeah, these worms were the exception. They really saw something extraordinary down there. But so I'm thinking about stuff like that, like very simple things that never have parallels again in the future, because the complicated ecosystems mean death for those things. So yeah, those aren't intelligent species either, but just cool creatures nevertheless.
Yes, I feel I kind of just want to adapt that idea into something Spec Evo related because it sounds fun.
I mean, you could make like a portfolio of like 8 drawings or something, and each one showing something else. So because it all comes down to laws of physics, and like even with very simple animals, you could get some really extraordinary shapes or formations. Like imagine those flatworms which we discussed. Imagine like a bunch of flatworms piled up on top of each other on land, like a sort of giant wormy pancake kind of thing. Like that would be cool to see.
Aren't there like these masses of caterpillars that also bunch up in the same way, and they leave like a trail of destruction behind them as they like eat their way through a forest?
Yeah, those are called pine processionary caterpillars, and they're extremely toxic. Their hairs are really irritating, and I know their names well because I almost got blind on one eye because of them. I was really careless. I was playing with them. So yeah. But yeah, that whole emergent property is just really interesting to consider. You also see that in things like slime molds, or those things that live like separate amoebas, but if there's a threat, they come together like a crowd and they produce a kind of tiny slug-like creature.
Yeah, slime molds do that, and also this other organism called Dictyostelium.
Oh, do tell me about it. What does the Dictyostelium do?
Well, I don't know if it is also slime mold or some other type of eukaryote, but yeah, it normally lives a single cell life, but in like stress situations, multiple Dictyostelium will come together and form like a slug-like organism or even a flower-like organism. It's very interesting, and I think we will probably get to that in a future episode. But there are fossils of like things that look like really large Dictyostelians from the Precambrian.
Oh, I'm thinking about going onto the land in the Silurian, and you walk for a bit, maybe in a tide pool or maybe slightly inland, and you see all these weird flower-like things bunched up. But when night comes, they unfold into these amoebas and they wander about. It's almost like this Disney cartoon about life on Mars with those weird slug-like things. I'm getting similar vibes from this scenario now.
Yeah, like I said, I want to adapt these ideas almost for a new Spec Evo project, but I need to finish my first two first. But like, well, actually, like an idea I had, I got a book as a present about the brachiopod fossils of Switzerland, and it's basically just a whole bunch of illustrations of only shells.
Oh, I love things like that.
With just at the beginning, like some long chapters about the anatomy and like soft body functions of living brachiopods and how those are reflected in the shells. And I had this idea about like a xenopaleontology book. So like imagine this scenario: humanity goes out into space to Alpha Centauri or Proxima Centauri b, this exoplanet that they found.
Yep.
And they survey it, and it is just lifeless. It's a desert world with like no life left. It has no ozone layer anymore. But they set up a colony, they start mining and digging, and as they dig, they do find fossils in the strata, and they uncover this life history that this planet used to have oceans, and it used to have multicellular life, but it like never advanced past like sponges and clams and stuff.
Well,
so,
I think
even the animal life is mostly sessile and just living off filter feeding and such. And the book would basically just like a very technical catalog of such alien shells, and just
That could be a
author.
wonderful art project.
Yeah,
Just
and the author is just like speculating. Okay, maybe like this angle, like this was like an attachment site for muscles, and maybe this is how we close the shell and such. And I also like and then like you also have like complex graphs. So in this period, this group is dominating, and then it starts to decline. We can link this to a certain sign of climatic change. All of this stuff where it's basically just all very speculative, even on the author's side, but you don't never really know what actually happened to this fauna and why the planet became uninhabitable. Maybe it was like a star explosion that just eradicated everything. Or maybe I can be cheeky and like put in some signs that like some other alien civilization came to the planet and just strip mined everything.
Well, I think you could really make a sort of Spec Evo Codex Seraphianus. You only need to do like 1,000 illustrations of very closely related weird seashell fossils and write five pages of text in the beginning and call it like a catalog of shells, a catalog of, I don't know, Xenostracan shells from Proxima Centauri or something like that. And by the way, you could retrofit some of the concepts we have been speaking about into your project about Mars, Hardeshur. Would you maybe want to tell a bit more about it so our viewers can visit your projects there too?
Yeah, if any of you have not heard about it yet, Hardeshur is my Spec Evo project where I present an alternate universe where Mars has stayed a bit more habitable into the modern day than it has in our reality. So you have plants and animal life on the surface, but it's not complex, there is no intelligent life, and it's all very extremophilic.
It's got some of the best creature designs I've seen, by the way. So,
oh, thank you.
And because of that,
that's a lot coming from you.
Yeah, my pleasure. But yeah, because of that extremophilia angle, you could work some of those concepts we've been talking about into it. But
you mean like those basically these slug colonies that just
the flower slugs, the giant pancake worms, the multi like land siphonophore types, lobopods and everything,
I do have that. Like I have these organisms. What did I call them? I think Sclerotaria, which are like they have shells, but they are sessile organisms living like they bore themselves into the hangs of mountains, and they live there a sessile life where they just filter the air for aeroplankton, and they can. And they look like bullet cases, basically. And also in like the Antarctic region of Mars, you have these things I based off Antarctic lichen, which are like giant, not protozoans, or like these like large protozoan colonies that are like very melanistic as protection against UV rays.
Wait, are these actual creatures we're talking about now? Antarctic lichen or?
I mean, the aliens, I based them off Antarctic lichen. Like there are organisms in the on Earth's Antarctic, mainly lichen, that like are very black in coloration, and it's thought that they use some of their melanin, I think, as something to like they can generate energy from gamma ray radiation.
I mean, stranger things have happened, so
yeah, like they first discovered this type of organism inside like one of the cooling cells in the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. So like
okay, yeah.
Like they found a fungus that lives off radiation, basically. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, actually, one of the OG books of speculative evolution, Man After Man. No, sorry, not Man After Man. Sorry, my brain is fried tonight. I'm talking about Last and First Man.
Yeah, Olaf Stapledon, is that how you say his name?
Yeah, exactly. So in that universe, there was life on Venus, but it was all based on radioactive materials from the bottom of the sea, and there was an entire ecology of very sophisticated creatures evolved from that. But yeah, in those extreme ends, biochemistry can get really weird and fantastic. And hey, there could have been like plant plants before plants that left no fossils, like gamma ray moss or stuff like this.
Oh, yeah, and then they died out when the ozone layer formed because then they couldn't absorb UV radiation anymore.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, those things could have been around by the Silurian if one could imagine hard enough. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, this will definitely get like relevant when we talk about like Precambrian civilizations.
Oh.
Yeah. Remember, I already made an illustration for that.
Oh, yeah. Oh, well. But yeah, I mean, look, biochemistry can get really weird. I also remembered out of nowhere, and this is maybe a bit removed from our discussion, but there was a paper about laser light being produced by organic processes. Do you remember that?
Oh, what? No. Is that is that a thing they found or just speculate about?
No, they actually found it. Wait, I'm just going to search for it and read to us. Just a second.
I'm a fire in my laser. Do you know that meme?
No, unfortunately, I'm behind on that. What's it about?
No, I think it was like a Dragon Ball meme.
Oh, maybe. I don't know.
Here, sustainable laser technology for the control of organisms. Is it that?
No, it's
okay.
Single cell biological lasers in nature, but of course it's gonna be behind the paywall. But it says here we show that
there are ways to circumvent that. Which I don't know if I'm allowed to say that here without like your channel getting flagged.
No, you can say it. It's okay.
SkyHub. Just Google SkyHub, everyone. If you want to bypass paywalls like this, and I will not say anymore.
All right. So these guys made biological cell lasers based on green fluorescent protein. They demonstrated them in vitro using recombinant GFP solutions and introduced a laser based on single live cells. And these cells remained alive even after producing laser light for a prolonged time. So yeah, strange and just bizarre. And
that is fucking awesome. You know, like with this, you open the floodgates. Oh wait, I actually have full access because of my university to this paper. If this, you open the floodgates because now you can have, like in sci-fi, there's always there is on one hand, you have races that are like entirely robotic. And on the other end of the spectrum, you have like purely biological creatures that have like living spaceships and stuff, and everything they have is like flesh-based. And now with this, you have an excuse to give them laser weapons.
Well, I think I'm sorry to reveal that we've been beaten to the punch by none other than David Brin, and he has a book called Sundiver. Just a second. Was it David Brin on? Just a second.
Sundiver. Let me see.
Yeah, it's by David Brin. So it's a very long story, but it is set in the Uplift universe where different species domesticate each other and raise them up to sentience. Anyways, one of the creatures there is called a pring. P-R-I-N-G. These prings have enormous eyes. They're like, I don't know, disco ball sized eyes on a very small head. And turns out they can actually produce laser light biologically inside their eyes. So not only can they see light, they can also project light. But as a species, they've hidden this ability from the outside world for thousands of years. And so there's this one pring on the ship, and he uses this ability to create illusions on the ship's viewing screens. And it's a special mission because the ship goes into the heart of a sun, and he creates the illusion of intelligent creatures living in the sun for reasons. And then they discover that this thing has been sabotaging the mission, and he fights back against our protagonists. But as you just described, it uses its eyes as lasers. And the way it's described in the book, it's not like a Star Wars kind of laser or a blaster. So there's no like bolt of light.
Like more like a commercial laser pointer.
Not even. The creature just looks at somebody's eyes and they go blind.
Oh.
Yeah.
But wait, that's the same with a laser pointer. If you point that in someone's eye, they go blind.
Yeah, but you don't even see like the red dot, because it's on another spectrum, and it's just insane. Like, so at the end, they use mirrors as shields and physically overpower this creature and stuff, but it's just wild. I think Sundiver
it's like a sci-fi version of Medusa. Medusa.
Exactly. I mean, I think Sundiver and the entire Uplift universe is like a very interesting series. And if you're interested in strange creatures and interesting science, I really recommend this series to everybody.
I also just remembered, doesn't Superman also have laser vision?
Oh, yes. You see, now we got the biological foundation for that.
Yeah, probably some comic writer already tried to explain that. Like they have an explanation for every single one of Superman's powers and how he doesn't give cancer to everyone with his X-ray vision.
Or like his sperm can travel faster than machine gun bullets, and like, yeah, there's this. There was this entire essay.
Is that a thing, or did you just make that up that he can do that?
No. There was this entire essay called "A Man of Steel, Woman of Kleenex." In today's standards, it was a bit sexist, but it doesn't matter. I mean, look, they talk about like if Superman was ever to like become intimate with Lois Lane, you know, when Superman has a super moment and has an orgasm, he cannot control his reflexes, but because he can fly faster than a bullet, so the ejaculation can happen at like twice the speed of sound or something. So the authors say that Superman should always wear a special kryptonite condom so he doesn't end up shooting his girlfriend when they're becoming intimate. So it was just...
But isn't that literally a scene from Hancock, if you know that movie?
I don't, but I'm pretty sure the people who wrote Hancock read that essay, because it's not a very niche thing. I mean, just look it up. Man of Steel, Woman of Kleenex. It was very popular. It was published in a lot of sci-fi magazines during the 90s and 80s. So I'm sure actually the writer...
The essay is from the 80s and 90s, you say, okay, because the movie is from 2008. So there is a chance it was inspired by that.
I'm pretty sure actually the writers of Hancock had to like pay royalties to that guy who wrote that bit, because anyways.
To if any listener who hasn't seen a movie is concerned, in the movie he doesn't actually shoot a girl. He basically, every time he has sex with a woman, he needs to use the pull-out method because he knows he could accidentally shoot her.
Oh, but it still would end up damaging the house, I think.
Yeah, like there is a gag where I think he lives like in a van and he's having sex with a girl. And then before he comes, he says, get off. And then she gets off. And then like it's like an outside shot of the van. And you see like 2 bullet holes being made in the roof of the car.
This is like, I don't know, this is like American Pie kind of humor. It's interesting to consider the implications. For example, what other reflexes can we not control? If you sneeze, that would be dangerous. That would be like a claymore mine explosion.
There is like this gif of a Russian guy sneezing. I think because he had a gun in his hand at the same time as he was like holding his nose. It looks like he's like shooting fire from his nose, because he was also accidentally pulling the trigger, but like nobody got hurt.
All right. On this note, I think I'm tapped out for the Silurian.
Can I make one last suggestion?
Please, by all means.
I mean, have you had cephalopod civilizations yet?
We haven't. Oh,
yeah.
Oh well, there were lots of nautiloids and ammonites back then.
Yeah, these were among the largest animals of the time, even, and maybe they could have been like modern squids,
but with the social reflexes and sophistication of whales.
Yes.
Okay, so we have another sophont. Yeah, when I think about a cephalopod civilization, I don't know why, but the theme from the Gangan City starts playing in my head.
Yeah. All right. That was the Star Wars series we did. That was so fun.
Yes. Yeah, we will tackle other fictional universes when we're finally through with the speculative intelligence marathon.
I've been replaying Halo recently.
I've never played it, but how does it feel?
It's the games are like I was playing the Master Chief Collection, which is a collection of all of the classic games up to Halo 4, and it's just a great story. It has like great gameplay.
Yeah.
I just really like the alien races. Like they are all vaguely humanoid, but they still are very alien. You know, like the main enemies are the elites, the Sangheli, which like basically they look like dinosaurs, but their lower jaw is like a like it's instead like four mandibles.
Well, I think Halo was also special in introducing the concept of the enemy aliens as a kind of space NATO kind of faction, where
Yeah,
it's not.
the Covenant is that is like an alliance of multiple alien species, which are interestingly not held together by like any lofty ideals like the Federation in started, but through religious zeal. And I think that was also like a very unique choice to show aliens that are like scientific, like that are technologically more advanced than us, but spiritually and psychologically like still in the Middle Ages. If like because the aliens in this game basically were the Crusaders from medieval times.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think the role of religion is really underrated. Like as technology develops, actually, there's a kind of imagine a graph of like technological development versus the enlightenment of an average individual in that society. It kind of rises in parallel until a certain stage, like the late steam or internal combustion era. Then it starts to drop because after a certain point, technology becomes so specialized and sophisticated that a single individual has no means to like wrap his or her head around it all. I mean, you can understand how a train works. You can understand because it's like metal and the parts, okay, it's sophisticated, but like, you can understand how a gun works. You can even like wrap your head around an internal combustion engine. But after you get electronics or like television or radio or computers, and then a single individual cannot like philosophically understand it. So actually, the population can now be less quote unquote developed and more religious because science has bypassed their understanding.
And that's how you end up with flat earthers, young earth creationists, and such, all spouting their conspiracy theories on Facebook and Twitter,
which are themselves like wonderful accomplishment of technology, but that
are now being co-opted by like the worst people on earth.
Yeah. Also, you have this kind of people can invent dumber versions of technology that they can understand to fit this narrative. So they think space lasers are doing this thing from the space to create fires in California or wherever.
Yeah, that was a U.S. senator who said that, Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Oh, yeah, that woman. It's like a worse version of Sarah Palin.
Yeah, Sarah Palin, was benign in comparison to the ghouls that now run America.
Oh, yeah. Now, like back in the day, she was like, oh my God, this is the worst, but if they only knew.
It's actually crazy. We said at the beginning, like has been a 4-month gap between today and the last episode. And so much shit happened in that time, including the US election. And let's not dive too much into this because it's kind of a running gag on this podcast that we start off saying we will not talk about politics, but then we dive into stuff like this.
Oh, well, I think I don't know what I think. I think this election, like, it was won by Trump years ago, and I think they just went through the motion. Unfortunately, the Democrats are also out of touch with the common people. And, with wars and economic hardship, people turn to easier solutions that are easier to digest. And I think no.
Yeah, but you see, like I can understand under certain circumstances voting for a more conservative candidate. Like the election of Ronald Reagan in the 80s made sense because the 70s saw such a financial crisis, which he like had planned to alleviate, and his plans did work in the short term. In the long term, they led to other problems, but they did work in the 80s. But with Donald Trump, I mean, that is a whole other case. I can't understand how anyone would want to vote for him because none of the let's not even talk about him as a person. I think none of his policies even worked during his first term, and still people want to vote for him.
Well, I think during the Biden years, Trump made a deal with people running the show with money. And
Elon Musk.
Yeah, Elon Musk, the Silicon Valley crowd, and like other factions like that. And now basically he's gonna give them. I mean, in the US, you're thinking too much like a European when you're thinking about policies and will this policy be good or bad. I think in the US, it comes down to basically a likability or popularity contest. And
it's just my team versus your team. Yeah, I did notice that.
yeah. Like Turkish politics are slightly more similar to America in that respect. But yeah, it is what it is. I think this election was kind of determined 2 or even 3 years ago, and I think they ran Kamala especially to lose, so they would use that as an excuse to roll back all the quote unquote woke stuff and usher in this now more bold and brazen, like rah pro-American era. And by having the Democrats lose in such a controlled and spectacular way, I think they're going to be able to pivot the political alignment of the entire country. And, well, the government will want or need to do things that the previous governments, with their at least political rhetoric, could not do. So I think it's going to come down to that, to say the least, anyways.
Yeah, like I'm worried about America's future. Like I don't hate America. I don't dislike it, but I don't like that they have all the weapons, you know.
Oh, I think really America won so big time. I mean, this Ukraine and Russia war also incapacitated Europe. It made the UK come running back to an American alignment again. It kind of cut Germany off from Russian gas and kind of left Europe in a tattered, shambling mess. I don't know. So now I think the United States is stronger than ever. I don't know if they know what to do with that power. They'll probably spend it going into a second Cold War with China. And I don't know. Beyond that.
I mean, Trump just straight up said what he wants to do. He wants to annex Canada and Greenland, which I mean, did you hear that? Like, I don't.
Yeah, I know, but
I don't believe he actually means it. It's just like some stunt again. But
no,
I mean,
it is
scary that he openly talks about like conquering his neighboring states.
You see, coming from Turkey, I unironically think that Erdogan may have been giving the Americans lessons in politics, because that's exactly what Erdogan used to do. He would imagine there's an election in 6 months or 2 months. He would say something outrageous. There would be a huge political debate around it, and then it would be forgotten. But then in the meantime, he would have already consolidated his stronghold on power. So I think like in a couple of months, nobody's gonna like talk about Greenland, or they're not gonna annex it. Everybody knows, but it's just it's not even like having a hidden agenda. It's about saying something, and every schmuck in the country ends up talking about what you said. You set the initiative. It's as simple as that. Like, you seize the political initiative, you set the debate, and the crazier it is, the better. And then it's business as usual. Usually these non-debates also cover up significant troubles in terms of economy and like all those fires and stuff like that. So I ironically think that the Turkish government is giving the Americans like paid lessons on how to rabble rouse and how to conduct power politics.
I mean, probably not just Turkey, like probably not just politicians in Turkey are using that strategy. Because I know in Germany you have this very far-right party called AfD, whose leader is ironically a lesbian woman who doesn't even live in Germany. She lives in Switzerland for tax reasons.
Oh my God.
So Alice Weidel, like, she recently said something like Hitler was actually a communist. And you know, all of the newspaper headlines were full with that, making fun of her and stuff. And I think she probably knows that she's talking bullshit, but it's good for her that she's in the headlines a lot.
Yeah, exactly. And by the way, that's like a very common far-right talking point, because they had the National Socialist thing in the name. It's easier to like spin that. So yeah.
For historical context, if I remember correctly, the party was called that because in the beginning it was a socialist party, but then it was hijacked by the Nazis, basically, and just kept the name. So
that socialism has no bearing to what socialism was during the Cold War or what socialism means today.
Yeah. Like
These
for
are
them,
all
it was basically just populist, like another code word for populism.
yeah. I mean, these are all semantic games, and
Oh
like
yeah.
there's a lot more I could say about that, but let's leave the Silurian where we are, and our candidates for intelligent species were A, your giant whale nautiloids,
Orthocones.
orthocones.
Yeah.
B, the slime mold creatures and the pancake flatworms and the ultraviolet gamma ray plantoids. And then C, the colonial land shoggoth lobopod. So there, and once again, it was wonderful talking with you.
It was wonderful talking with you too. And to all our viewers, please consider visiting Memo's Patreon.
Yes, and
And
TK's Patreon too.
yeah, and I think I already did the OnlyFans joke in like 10 previous episodes, so I'm gonna leave it there.
Okay. All right, man. This was a great time, and thanks for this podcast. And well, I'm gonna hit the sack now, but wish you all a great day, and see you next time as we explore the Ordovician period.
Bye.
Goodbye.